Your name is right?
I've done it.
Hello and welcome to the GhostÉire Channel. My name is Anthony Kerrigan, and tonight we're joined by Dr. Ciarán O'Keeffe. How you doing, Ciarán?
Good evening, Anthony. How are you?
Oh, good. This is the GhostÉire Channel, and join us tonight. We're going to be talking about three main subjects tonight. We're talking about Ciarán's new book, which is co-written, called Ghosted. Also going to be talking about psychic criminology, and the last topic as well, a historic place called Hampton Court Palace in London, England. Folks, tonight we had a competition as well. Like, this is penultimate chance for you to enter the competition. We're giving two of you a chance now to enter our competition. I'm going to give you a word later on in the show and be the first person or the second person to type the word, and you're in a chance to enter our Halloween mega draw. Also, folks, we will reveal the results of the poll that we did past week, and the question was, do you think psychic detectives have a role to play finding evidence in legal criminal cases in modern civilization? And we'll reveal the results midway through the show, and we'll go through with Ciarán, see what he thinks of the results there as well. So just a few shout outs as well there. So Cara says, hey, Cara from Third Eye Adventurers. How you doing, Cara? I'm here as usual. How you doing, Cara? Joanne Breens from Seekers of the Afterlife says, hi, Anthony and Ciarán. TJ Mills says, hi all. And Joanne says, Seekers of the Afterlife says, congratulations on your new book there, Ciarán.
Thank you. That's lovely. Nice to get congratulations.
If you want to catch up on past shows or future shows, go to our website, www.ghostére.net. Go on to the homepage, and there's a red button saying GhostÉire Channel. You can catch up on past shows and see what is coming up. If you have a question for Ciarán as well, do feel free to put them forward there as well, if it's anything to do with Right Said Fred. Or anything like, I'm too sexy for my KT meat or something.
All right, said Fred, love it.
But I suppose the first thing I'm going to ask you, Ciarán, because you've got a father in your name, an Irish file there, Irish ancestry there. Where does it come from there?
Yeah, well, you're right to say father on the A there. That's not an accent. That's a father, which is the right way of saying it. And yes, Ciarán O'Keeffe. O'Keeffe from my dad's side, from Dublin. So yes, a O'Keeffe family going back. Dublin, of course, got lots of O'Keeffes in Cork as well. But yeah, primarily the Dublin area, and Cabra, for anybody that knows Dublin, the north side.
Yeah.
That's where the O'Keeffes were. And we've also got O'Keeffes in Howth, just outside of Dublin as well. So yeah, big long line. And then part of the O'Keeffe lineage are Daltons as well. We've got Daltons in Ireland who went out to America, and we've got Daltons in Pennsylvania and California and Chicago, just all over the place. So yeah, huge Irish lineage going on there.
Yeah, there's Daltons in Tipperary that I know of. There's a house called Dalton House there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Michelle from Back in Time says, hi guys, really looking forward to the show from all in Back in Time. And Mary from the same team says, hi guys. Michael Ryan also says, hi all, hope you are all okay. Hi Kieran. So that's Michael as well. So what's going to, well, come to your question in a minute there, Michael, there, but I'm going to first talk about your new book there, Kieran, there. Can you tell us what is it about? Is it about ghosts?
Yes, I mean yes, it's a long shot, but yes. The title Ghosted, I mean, it's interesting because the title Ghosted implies something else entirely. It's about relationships and that sort of thing. There's a lot of discussion about what would be the best title, but Ghosted is the main title, and it has significance because effectively the book is about a relationship with ghosts. It's about our relationships with ghosts. It's about people who have ghostly experiences and their relationship with ghosts, but it's also, the subheading is exploring the haunting reality of paranormal encounters. And it is a book about all of the research that's been conducted by myself and my co-authors over about a 4 or 5 year period. So we all got together, and it is only about 4 years ago. We got together about 4 years ago because of a mutual interest in understanding ghostly experiences. And I don't mean explaining them away. I just mean just a love and an interest in ghostly experiences. And we published in a short period of time over 20 scientific articles about ghosts. And we just said, you know what, the culmination of this really is to put it all in a book and rewrite it in a way that's accessible for a mainstream audience, because a lot of scientific stuff comes across as too much jargon, quite complex written, the message might not come through. So we've taken all of that research, all of those papers, put them all in one book and made them accessible and interesting for people. So that's the book, and it's authored by a number of us. We call it the Global Ghost Gang.
Okay.
We're all kind of an international team of researchers looking at ghosts. So yeah, exciting stuff.
And it has several cases in there. There's several cases, accounts by people.
Yes, yeah, cases, but also scientific stuff. But there's also occasional moments where we present cases that have interested us. You know, what's interesting is that because we've got a global ghost gang, and there are a number of us. Excuse me.
No, go ahead.
Because we've got a number of us with different perspectives. You know, from skeptic to believer, but extreme and at every point along that spectrum. What you've got is a number of people putting forward their perspective. So you actually hear us talking about cases at various points that we find particularly interesting. So I'm not sure if it made the final cut, but one of the cases I talk about is a case in Birkenhead, on the other side of the river from Liverpool, where there was a haunted nightclub that had been closed down. And there was one particular night where the staff said that the fire exit doors opened of their own accord. And they had CCTV footage of this happening. CCTV footage was somewhat grainy, but effectively these fire exit doors are the ones that have the big bars on them that you need to push down really with some force, and then the doors open. And I was there. There had been an investigation for a number of months by a group that you're familiar with, Parascience and Steve Parsons. And I was based in Liverpool at the time, and he kind of asked me to come along, not in any other way, just kind of be part of the investigation and lend my perspective. And I happened to be there one particular night, and those same doors, fire exit doors, opened of their own accord, even to the extent where we had a chair wedged into them to stop it from happening. And yet there was such force with these doors that it almost, the chair almost flew out from these handles. And then on that same evening, there was a seance conducted by a group of staff who willingly wanted to do a seance, although it's not my particular approach. We filmed it with a thermal imager, and at some point there was a green fog. So we had it set to black and white, which means when it's green, it's a drop in temperature. There was a green fog that was approaching the seance table. And it was coincident with people going, well, it feels like the energy's building up now. And the fog was kind of surrounding them at the seance table and just kind of sat there for about 20, 30 minutes whilst they were getting communication with glass divination and just a general sense there was something there. Then about half an hour, one of the people around the table says, "Oh, it feels like the energy's kind of going." And she said it just as this green fog started to go and just kind of disappear away. And it's one of those, I think the best way of talking about it is head-scratching moments. You know, you could say it's paranormal, and I think that's a good explanation for it. But it's that really weird thing of, you've got people talking about an experience, they're talking about energy, they're interpreting this drop in temperature. So you've got a subjective, very personal interpretation, but you've got a piece of equipment that's measuring something, and it's measuring an anomaly that you can't really explain. And we talk in the book about the use of gadgets, sometimes the wrong use of gadgets, sometimes the right use of gadgets, you know, some of the theories behind it. So we talk about that, but also, yeah, occasionally there are cases like that we talk about how useful gadgets can be to kind of support personal experience. So yeah,
as you said there, I suppose that, like, you saw this mist appear and then disappear. There was an origin of it, and then you've seen it dissipate there.
yeah.
Can you tell us more about the co-authors then as well? Did they have a paranormal background as well?
Yes. So I think we're blowing our own trumpet by calling ourselves the Global Ghost Gang, but that's effectively what we are, the Global Ghost Gang, because we're an international team. So you've got Brian Lath, who's a ghost hunter. I mean, all of us have PhDs and all do academic research, but also we're involved in ghost research from different perspectives. So Brian is the owner of a consultancy, but study of anomalous and religious experience, his own paranormal group in the States. So that's Brian, who's the first author. James Ciarán, I've known for donkey's years. He wrote a classic parapsychology textbook about 20 years ago called Multidisciplinary Perspectives on Ghosts and Poltergeist. And this book is kind of saying, 20 years on, what do we know? And the awful punchline, or the good punchline, depending on your perspective, is 20 years ago, this definitive parapsychology textbook was written about multidisciplinary perspectives on hauntings and poltergeist. 20 years later, what do we know? What further research has been done? And there's a little bit of that punchline, which is not a lot. We don't know a lot. And part of that is because of James Ciarán getting us all together, who's a really well-known parapsychologist. Then we got a couple from Manchester, Neil Dagnall and Kenneth Drinkwater, who are both psychologists. They look at stuff very skeptically, kind of trying to explain people's experiences using cognitive psychology and kind of thinking processes. And then there's me, lowly old me, who's a psychologist, parapsychologist, but also at heart a ghost hunter. So that's what I mean. We've got all these different perspectives, which is brilliant.
And I'll just come to a few shout outs first there, and then I'll come back to the book as well there. Adele says, "Hi guys, hi Adele, how you doing?" Therese O'Carroll says, "Hi, hey, how you doing, Therese?" Declan Clark says, "Who are you going to call? GhostÉire?"
Absolutely.
Mary says, "The Global Ghost Group, the Fijis, awesome."
Global Ghost Gang.
Sorry.
But still 3Gs. Still 3Gs, Mary. Brilliant.
3Gs. Mary, Sadie Bates. Hi, Sadie. How you doing? Hey, guys. So I just go through. I'm just going to ask you more about the book. There's a phrase they call haunted people syndrome. Can you tell us what that's about there?
Yes. So a number of the research articles that we published are available online. We specifically were trying to publish them in scientific journals where you did have access. So one of the first articles we published was about something called haunted people syndrome, which was a term that we developed. And it's recognizing that when people have haunted experience, there's an array of subjective experiences, and by subjective the word means personal, so that they can only be verified by you. And then there's objective anomalies as well. So when you have a haunting experience, you can have a single haunting experience, which is a sense of presence. But actually, if you're constantly having haunting experiences, there can be a whole array going on. So you could be seeing something, hearing something, touched by something. But the personal stuff, there's also the objective stuff where they're things that are moved or tangible things that you can measure. So I mentioned about the green mist, for example. Now that's the personal experience of an energy or a drop in temperature, very personal, but then you've got something to be able to measure it and objective stuff. Now, what we're saying with the haunted people syndrome is that we did an analysis of hundreds and hundreds of accounts of people's experiences. And we found that there was a regular structure of anomalous subjective and objective anomalies. So a definite structure to people's accounts and to people's experiences. But what we found with haunted people syndrome, and the reason why we call it haunted people syndrome, is not because we're saying this is what a psychiatrist should stand up and suddenly diagnose with people with, because that gives very much the wrong impression. It's not that. It's effectively a term, HPS, that we created to recognize, look, our research shows that these accounts exist across cultures and, most interestingly for me, across experiences. So even though we originally developed it looking at hauntings, you could actually look at it for alien abduction experiences. You could look at it for imaginary friends. You know, when children have imaginary friends, you can look at it for something called group stalking, which is a very modern phenomenon, almost like being pursued by men in black and kind of that sort of thing. It's a term called group stalking, or satellite terrorism, some people call it, where you feel as though you're being played, you're being watched, you're being spied on by various agencies, including even some mundane agencies like the gas board and stuff like that. But that's an experience together with abduction, together with UFO type experiences, together with imaginary friends, hauntings, possession, demon influence, all of these. But actually we're saying, all of these are conceptually similar. That when you start to look at people's accounts, you can tell that there's a definite structure. And even more interesting than that was that is a very solid, consistent structure to people's experiences. But we did lots of research asking people to fake accounts. So we specifically said, imagine that you are in a haunted location, make up an experience that you might have in a haunted location. And then we had hundreds of accounts from people that were just asked to imagine those accounts. And what we did was we compared the accounts of those that were imagined, kind of faked, and those where people genuinely felt they had an experience, and they're different. You know, and that's the lovely thing, is that we've almost created it there, almost a tool where if somebody tells you about their experience, you can use that tool. It's almost like a checklist and go, okay, well, this is what we'd expect, and this is kind of roughly the order we'd expect. Actually, the way the person has told this is totally different, which implies there's some imagination involved rather than the genuine experience. Or you can use it and verify and go, that person genuinely believes they had an experience. There was no imagination involved. They just genuinely believed it. So it's a lovely little aspect to the book, and we kind of break it down and make it more understandable in the book for people. But it was a lovely part of the research that we conducted. So yeah, HPS, haunted people syndrome.
All right, so that's something meant HPS. That's what I wanted to know there, Ken. Only joking. But I suppose, like as you said, like I suppose, like top-down process, like people like believe what they're going to, their cultural belief that they're going to find something there, or being told there. Can people? Is that true? What top-down process is?
Top-down processing. Well, it's interesting you say that. Top-down processing is about the cognitive processes involved in perceiving, whether you're seeing or hearing, or any form of perception, because we taste, we touch, we smell. But when we talk about perception and all of those things, let's talk about it quite simply. In ghost hunting, when you see or hear something, top-down processing is the higher level cognitive processes such as memory, psychological factors such as expectation, history, the stuff that we are influenced by, and all of those things can play a huge influence on us, and I think people forget that when we see or perceive anything, that we need to think about our own personality. We need to think about our mood at that particular point. We need to think about our fatigue level, all of those different things. And all of that is top-down processing. And so as an element of that we discuss in the book, like you said, about haunting experiences, that there's a tendency for people that have haunted experiences to have the top-down processing kind of overloaded, that there's a lot going on with the top-down processing. But there's a little caveat to that, which is, any of my psychology colleagues, if they were here now, they would go, well, actually, anybody that perceives anything, there is top-down processing and there also is bottom-up processing. And the bottom-up processing is the simple processing of the image going through our eye and then how that goes into the brain. The top-down processing is all of that stuff that comes with it. And we're all human, and we're all influenced by all of that stuff, whether it's memory, mood, mental health, cognition. It doesn't matter what it is, but maybe we're more influenced by it in a haunting context.
It's amazing what you say, because I remember we got a book out as well, and I mentioned about table tipping as well, and it's always at the end as well. I suppose it's a top-down process, and then at the end we say, "Oh, we'll leave the table. We'll finish it up." Then the table ceases immediately. So whether that's us influencing the table, it never ever gets more active when somebody suggests, "Right, we'll leave it now. We're fatigued. We're fatigued or we're hungry."
Yes.
It never actually gets more vibrant. So that's something I noticed there as well. So whether it's ourselves or unconsciously doing it there,
Well, as you know, we've discussed a similar sort of thing, maybe not so much in terms of top-down processing, but this idea of group PK. That, of course, when you're using table phenomena, which is table tipping, table turning, levitation of table, the idea behind it is you've got a group of people standing around a table attempting to contact spirit. And the phenomena of the table moving is then believed to be the spirit causing it. But why couldn't it be the people around the table causing it? True. As in their subconscious PK willing the table to move. You're all there with a vested interest in wanting it to move to prove to you that the spirit is communicating. Well, effectively, that could be subconscious PK at work actually causing the table to move. But I'm not detracting from the fact that would be amazing if that was the case. I mean, that's a paranormal thing, so it'd be equally amazing. But yeah, maybe there's something going on there. But it's just interesting you mentioned about fatigue and all those other factors that play a role, when we're doing table tipping or any form of divination.
Or you might notice somebody else who's fatiguing. That's why you say it, and then you all, as you say, group conformity there. Probably one last question there, I suppose, before I'll come to your questions now there, folks. There. Psi versus survival do you think people aren't like people like myself, the average ghost hunter like that? Should we be investigating more to do with our psi there, more than our psyche there, more than ghosts, experimenting in telepathy, cognitive states and clairvoyance?
It's tough. I think it's a really good question. And it would be dangerous for me to say yes or no, to be honest, because either answer would imply that you're then going down a particular theory. The phenomena is being caused by a ghost, or the phenomena is being caused by psi and by us. And I think then the danger is that you're experimenting or you're researching or you're doing your ghost hunting, whatever it is, focus down that one line, and the potential there then is to ignore anything else that happens and just take on board the stuff that confirms your hypothesis. We call it cognitive dissonance. You're ignoring the stuff that goes against your theory or your belief, but you're taking on board what accepts it. If anything, the best way to be, and I look at you, for example, in terms of all the research you've done and the parapsychology classes you've taken, you're going into a haunted environment thinking about the ghosts have caused this, but also you're going, there's parapsychology, there's psi, there's telepathy, precognition, clairvoyance, PK, there's all of this sort of stuff. And I think that's the best way to be, is to be knowledgeable about it all and be open-minded about the possibility of it being anything.
True, yeah. As you said there, I was thinking myself, is it the psi from the spirit world then as well? Can it be them?
Yeah, it could be anything.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. When people have experiences where they see a ghost, for example, are they actually seeing a ghost, or is a ghost a spirit from the afterlife projecting their image into the person's head, which is a
True,
form of telepathy? So yeah,
yeah.
could be anything. The world is your oyster in terms
Mm.
of thinking about possible paranormal explanations, which is a lovely place to be.
Michael says, I'm going to reveal the details. Well, but just before your question there, Michael, there, sorry, and I'll come back to you now in a second. Can you tell us where people can get the book there, Kieran?
Yes, people can get the book if they go to McFarland. So if you type in McFarland, MC Farland, Farland, product Ghost Hunt. I don't know if I can. Can I type it into the chat room? I don't know. I can.
But I don't know. This is
Modern
new to me.
technology. There we go. Did I do it? I don't know if
This
I
is a
did it. I
cheaper version
typed
of
it into something
StreamYard.
called Host Chat.
Okay,
But yes,
cool.
so McFarlandBooks.com. Just look up Ghosted. McFarlandBooks.com, and you can pre-order it there.
Perfect.
And I would encourage you to do that. Pre-order it there, and I'll be circulating all around, all over the place, all over Europe actually, at various points. So if I am turning up in a place near you, then I'm obviously going to be happy to sign your copy if you did pre-order it. So yeah.
Perfect. Just go run through the questions. So Michael says, if a ghost is haunting a place, does that ghost see the place as it was or as it is now?
I think the answer to that question is ask the ghost.
Probably,
because
yeah. That's.
I mean, that's my cynical answer, and that's a funny answer because, of course, we don't know, do we? But I think it's a brilliant question. It's absolutely a brilliant question, and it ties into all the possible theories as of what's going on. You know, there's that fabulous film, The Others, for example, with Nicole Kidman, where the whole family is there, and they keep seeing. I'm not going to give the punchline away, but they keep seeing everything that's going on around them, and they're perceiving the environment that's around them as it was when they were living there.
True.
You know, whereas you have some ghosts, and people claim that interact with you, and the reason they're interacting with you is because they're seeing the changes that have happened. And it's not unusual for people to say that ghosts and phenomena start happening when there's renovation in a property, for example. You know, so there's lots of particular answers to that, and I think it's and that's a lovely question as well, because that ties into what we were just talking about, keeping an open mind about all the possibilities.
True. Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
It's a good question, Michael. Then is more you go into this field there, I suppose it more opens up more questions and answers there. Like, Carrie, I'm going to come to your question later on because it coincides with one of mine there, Cara. So sorry about that there, like, because we're going to be talking about Hampton Court later on about investigating then. Joanne says, our sense of sight and sound normally kick in during investigations. The senses of taste and smell, not too much. If you hear something, do you immediately look for a debunk? I think she's trying to say for a debunk.
That's a really good. So the lead into that. Yeah, so absolutely right. I think in terms of senses, we focus more on our sight and sound. Absolutely, we do. We don't tend to focus on the other things. And I think there's merit to us just sensing, just being in a room and just going, right, get a sense of the atmosphere. But you're absolutely right. We tend to focus on sight or sound. The next bit is, if you hear something, do you immediately look for a debunk? That's a very good question. In a ghost hunt, if I'm in a ghost hunt and it's my own personal experience, the answer is yes. That's just my perspective. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but that's what I do. If somebody else is having the experience, then no. I'd be interested in hearing more about their experience, and it's only a little bit later on we might explore alternative explanations for what's going on. But I think it's wrong to immediately barrel in and debunk everything, because you're then affecting somebody's worldview. You know, the experience that they've had might be hugely significant and incredibly positive. So for somebody like me to jump right in and go, "Oh, I can explain that away, that's rubbish," well, there's no ethics involved in that. You know,
sounded like Ricky Gervais there.
Yeah. Rubbish. Yeah, you need to be conscious of the fact that people are, you know, affected by these experiences, and it's a huge impact.
Yeah, so it's a phenomenological approach. Is that how you say it?
Phenomenological, yeah. Phenomenology. Yeah. Brilliant word.
Ryan says he's evening everyone, pre-recording your book now. The psychological considerations of paranormal experiences are massive interest to me. Can't wait to read it.
Thanks, Ryan.
I'm pre-ordering. Yeah. I said pre-recording. Sorry.
Pre-ordering. Brilliant.
Pre-ordering. Declan says, do you have a ghostwriter? I don't know.
That's funny. I presume that's a joke. Yes. No, we all wrote it, but yes, it's a lovely joke. Do you have a ghostwriter for a ghost book?
Mary, she's from GhostÉire as well. Hi, Anthony. Hi, Kieran. Long time fan. Any chance of having your own TV series? I was going to say that there's not enough parapsychologists on TV at the moment. There, like it's all. Would you ever your own TV series? I know you've been on numerous others.
Yes, yeah, potentially. Although I don't know if having my own TV series would be exciting enough.
Oh.
Do you know what I mean? I don't. You know, the sort of show that I would do would not necessarily be a ghost hunting show. It would be more of a documentary style, which would be fine. I always think of Arthur C. Clarke's, Mysterious World, that sort of show, which would be amazing. So I'd love to have something like that. I think a ghost hunting show would be slightly different. A lot of people, they say that I am the party pooper. And although I'm not cynical, they actually mean that, because in a location where everything's kicking off and loads of things are happening, if I walk in, it tends to stop. So imagine that transferred to a TV show. I think people would be a little bit
but I remember
my perspective would be
I just come in there because I remember watching I was going to show a video there of Most Haunted there, and there was a section there, Pendle Hill 2004.
Oh, classic.
And it's the moment there only I suppose I was goosebumps. I got goosebumps now watching, remembering it back there. But all hell was breaking loose. But you had the rational. I remember you were saying it could be many. Everyone was keeling over. Everyone was falling over. But you gave a rational explanation to what could be happening then. And people like myself and other people that watched the show looked for you to explain things. You were the calm head, and that's what was needed sometimes there, just to bring it back down that levels to get that rational explanation there.
True. That's true. That was an amazing show, Pendle Hill Live. That was Tyndale Farm, and yet everybody was dropping like flies. And I think I said the next day, it was like being a medic in a battlefield. You just didn't know where to turn. It was just phenomenal. But yes, it was quite obvious around me that there was a very good psychological explanation for what was going on. There was a lot of hysteria that had built up from the beginning of that show that night at 9 o'clock about the witches and about the strangulation, and there was a lot of references to that. And then we're in an environment that's very, very dusty, and then the first person had a form of stridor, which is kind of breathing effect. Your breathing is affected. He was affected heavily by the dust holding on to his neck. People immediately interpreted that as something to do with the witches. Kind of the hysteria, the group contagion took over, and it was just people started to be affected psychologically by what happened. Even the cameraman, at some point, people said, "What do you think happened to the cameraman?" At some point, the camera, the footage just went black as the cameraman fell to the ground and the camera hit the table. Well, it was that contagion and hysteria. He actually got hit on the back of the head because he went back to take a wide shot and his head hit a shelf that was on the wall. But of course, he was caught up in the hysteria of people having experiences. And when his head hit the shelf, he went, "Oh my God, what's that?" and fainted. And just fainted down to the ground. So there's a lot of psychology going on there. But yeah, thanks very much. My role has always been to kind of look at the rational side, but also the calming influence. So yeah, there's a potential role there. My own TV series. I tried a little bit with Ghostlands that I did with my wife Anna, and we put that on YouTube, Ghostlands Online, and you can find a couple of episodes of that. That's again trying to approach it in a more rational way, but yeah, we'll watch this space. Who knows? It might happen in the future.
And definitely, if you're come over to Ireland, definitely. It's been a long time there.
Absolutely.
Mary Nolan says, having worked in Loftus Hall as a tour guide and paranormal investigator for a few years, there'll be many people with fatal experience whilst on an investigation. And indeed, some teams investigating their fabricated evidence just don't understand why people would do that there. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yes. Don't understand why people would do that, but also it connects with TJ's question there, saying, would Ciarán believe there could be a lot of fake or fabricated evidence to keep audiences engaged? And although he's referring, or sorry, he, I don't know.
Oh, that's TJ's he. Yeah, it's TJ anyway. It's TJ. Yeah.
So I don't know if TJ's referring to shows, to TV shows, but Mary's kind of referring to her experience working in a location. But I think the question applies to anything, any context. It applies to locations. It applies to, your own ghost hunts, public ghost hunts. It applies to TV shows. That question of, is it possible that some of the phenomena could be fake or fabricated to keep audiences engaged or to keep those around you engaged or for any number of other different reasons? Yeah, of course. Absolutely. The same way, could it be a ghost? Absolutely. There's lots of possible explanations going on, but we're dealing with a field where, in some instances, people are either trying to keep an audience engaged, like you said, TJ, or they're trying to convince others of the reality of the phenomena. And if the phenomena doesn't happen, then they may fabricate it once, but the justification is, I'm only doing it once so that people believe, but actually I've seen 20 instances when it was real.
True, yeah.
There's an interesting psychology going on there. But yeah, I think it's a great point, Mary, and a really good question, TJ. Thanks for that.
I was thinking about I was just thinking about the other day, because it's going to be a question you got asked later on, just briefly about Hampton Court. But about people investigating, I suppose there's no gap in difference between. There is a gap, but everyone can go out paranormal investigating, and compared to people like yourself that do studies and research and all that, the average Joe Soap that would probably the average now that would go out just for YouTube and looking to get hits is kind of in the same sort of bracket as in paranormal investigating now. Would you agree on that?
Yes, the
hard work.
I wouldn't call it a discipline, but like you say, paranormal research, it's not even ghost research or ghost hunting has changed even in our time. We've known each other for a number of years, but even within the last 10 years, I think it's changed. When we have never been in a situation where there has been such an explosion of media available to witness people ghost hunting. Like you said, here we are, Facebook. So all forms of social media, but also Netflix, Prime, YouTube. People are kind of inundating all of these platforms with films of their own ghost research or ghost hunting, call it what you will. And of course, yes, absolutely. It therefore means that potentially the motivating endpoint, which is to get something up online as a platform, the motivating endpoint might skew, influence, and affect your own ghost hunt.
True, yeah.
You've got that constantly in mind, so therefore it's going to affect it, which is very, very different to in the past, where you would ghost hunt and you'd be ghost hunting either because you wanted to capture the evidence, or ghost hunting because you wanted to have an experience, or ghost hunting because the client that you're working for wants to know what's going on and you're looking for a natural explanation. There's a little bit of that's left to one side with everybody trying to put stuff online, so it has changed. It has changed the field, and I think it's changed the field for the good, but also there's the bad as well. So with the good comes the bad, and you get, countless instances of stuff that is very poorly done. And I think, unfortunately, people then view that and think that's how it's done, and it becomes a vicious circle. So it can be damaging. It can also be good. It can be damaging. The good part is you and I are talking. The field has never been so huge, and it's never been so huge to an extent where people, like-minded individuals, can talk about this stuff openly without fear of ridicule. I think it's a lovely field now.
Yeah, it's great that way there. And stay tuned for the quiz, folks. You can win some YouTube software where you can upload your ghost hunt in 24 hours, and Kieran has a chance to do that. Get as many hits as you can. I'm only joking, I'm messing. That's a joke. Irene from California says hi. Oh, hi Irene. How you doing?
Hi, Irene in California.
How you doing? We'll go to the quiz shortly there. Michelle Conley from Back in Time also says, do you think a location that is open to tourists dilutes the energies and spirits that might be there?
That's a great question, Michelle, and it's not unusual to hear that. The location where Anna and I met, my wife and I met, was Wimmering Manor in Portsmouth, and I've heard many investigators talk about Wimmering Manor that the activity is almost like a ride in a fun fair. You get peaks and troughs, and part of it has been because of it. For a period there, it was inundated almost every weekend of the year, and even some weekday nights. It was investigated by people, and there was a real sense that the activity was dropping off. And there was a huge discussion that happened about, well, why is that? Is it because, like you said, it's just been inundated with ghost hunters? And that was one possible theory. And then shut down for a bit as a bit of renovation. A new company took it over, and then it opened its doors again, and suddenly the activity started to build up. So it kind of buys into that theory. Michelle's asking it a slightly different way, which is about tourists entering, and I think that's an interesting one. And the ghost hunting one, I think, has some potential logic to it, especially if ghost hunters are going in every week going, is there anybody there? Give me a sign. Give us a knock, move something. If ghost hunters are doing that on a weekly basis, you can imagine if there is actually anybody there causing this stuff, after a month or so, they're just going to go, shut up. I don't want to do this.
True,
Doing this every week. I've done it for you last week. Why do I have to do it again? But the tourist question is slightly different, Michelle. And I think the answer to that is no. I don't think it does. And the reason why I don't think it does is because of the experience and the research that I've had with very heavily tourist visited spots like Hampton Court Palace and Hever Castle and various ones like that. Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia as well. Alcatraz as well as a well-known location. So a lot of these really touristy sites, I don't necessarily think they do dilute the energy. But of course, I'm approaching it as a parapsychologist, and my first-hand experience visiting these locations and doing the research and seeing a location where you've got ghostly experiences happening at a location for hundreds and hundreds of years, and then suddenly it's inundated by tourists, and those experiences do not stop. And that for me illustrates, well, no, there's something else going on there. But if you ask somebody that's more in tune with energies, they might have a very different answer. But yeah, good question. Thanks, Michelle.
As well, so Vine's just noticed something. There's something paranormal going on in the background there. I'm pretty sure you had 3 pumpkins.
Yeah, he's right. I noticed that there were 3 to start with, and now there's only 1. What happened there?
Yeah, I'm just they're moving, they're levitating, as you can see there. No, it's just I think it's slowing down the internet there. I don't know if I'm stuttering there or whatever.
Brilliant.
What do you call it? Buffering? I've never been buff. What I was going to say, so folks, I'm going to just on that question, actually, the word that I'm going to give you for the quiz there, folks. First 2 people in, I want you to type the word pumpkin, Pumpkin. You don't have to do that, Kieran, or you can go automatically into the Halloween mega draw where you get to win a few pens and sellotape, all that kinds of stuff for Halloween.
Superb.
So the fun.
Mary.
Mary's in there first. Mary, you're in. Well done, Mary. TJ, you're in there now. Next, this is how we get all the 5,000 comments there. So people say, "Why are they saying pumpkin on the?" I don't know. They think there's a good pumpkin moving in the background. Anyway, TJ and Mary, well done there. You're in there. Chance to go on the quiz. So the next subject is going to be, stay tuned, TJ and Mary. The next subject is going to be psychic criminology there.
Oh, yeah.
Something that Keane's very in with there. So Keane, can you tell us a bit, what is forensic criminology or forensic psychology?
There's lots of different terms there, but psychic criminology is a general term that effectively I adopted. Originally, it was a term that just meant psychic detectives, so people who claim to be able to assist criminal investigations using a psychic ability. I've now adopted that term, and I changed its usage about 20 plus years ago. Psychic criminology is any aspect of the paranormal that happens within a legal or criminal justice context. So it does include psychic detectives, psychics who claim to be able to help with criminal investigations, but it also includes lots of other things. So, for example, there have been legal cases where the jury has retired and used a Ouija board to try and contact the murder victim in an attempt to try and find out if their deliberations were true. Now, of course, the case was thrown out because they found out a Ouija board was used, but that's another example of psychic criminology. But by far, the vast majority of psychic criminology stuff is around psychics who claim to be able to help. And it's predominantly murder cases and missing person cases. And I got involved in this because of a fascination and qualification within forensic psychology. So even though I'm a parapsychologist, which is the paranormal side, I am also a what's called an investigative psychologist. So an investigative psychologist is a sub-discipline of forensic psychology that's specifically interested in using psychology to assist in criminal investigations. So it's things like hostage negotiation, detective decision making, psychological profiling, interrogation, that sort of thing. And it's doing research on those things, but also assisting and aiding the police in terms of doing that. And whilst I was doing my qualification in investigative psychology, because I had an interest in the paranormal, I combined the two. And I ended up testing for my master's, testing psychic detectives, bringing them into the lab. I set up a police interview room. I had a senior police officer interview the psychics and give them objects from a crime scene and basically test them. And I find the whole concept fascinating. I really, really do. Absolutely fascinating. I'm quite skeptical about it, and I'm also, I guess, quite down on the involvement of some psychics on particularly high-profile cases. So Madeleine McCann is a prime example. I think should have been left well alone in terms of psychics' involvement in that. But I still find it fascinating. I find it fascinating that it's possible, or that people think it is possible. And I think it almost takes on a Hollywood-esque fascination. You know, it's just the idea of it. It's just wonderful.
I know, because it's all, I suppose it's all, there's the get me out, I've forgotten the wrong term now. I think it's there's murder tourism now at the moment. It's all the go now, all the rich people going to where people have sadly are supposed to be murdered and all that. And I suppose psychic criminology, I suppose with TV programs as well, like I think it was Medium as well or something like that.
Yes.
But before I touch on like an historic case and all that, can you tell us what kind of ways, methods psychic detectives use, like dowsing, and is that one, and hypnosis?
Yeah, there's loads of different sorts. So a lot of it is down to the individual, so the individual psychic themselves in terms of their preferred method. So if it's a missing person, for example, I know there are some psychics, including Uri Geller, for example, who will use dowsing methods with a map. Even they don't even need to be in the real world. They can have a map and use either a pendulum over the map or some other means. And so they're using very much the dowsing technique to look for the missing person, either map-based or live-based, so they can be out using a pendulum or using dowsing rods. Other psychics will use psychometry, so they'll have objects from a crime scene, they'll hold on to them, and from the energy of that object, they'll hopefully be able to get information about the owner of that object or about the people that have touched that just from holding it themselves. And then there's another form of psychic who are mediums effectively, and they, especially in murder cases, will attempt to communicate with the victim as an attempt to try and work out details about the perpetrator, about the murderer themselves. So lots of different methods that are used, but like I said, it's mainly down to the psychic themselves and what they do.
And I suppose like it goes back through history. Is there any cases that interest you there yourself there?
Yeah, there's loads of cases. So
Mm.
a lot of people talk about Noreen Renier, for example, as a particular psychic who's got some well-known cases, and the Williston case is a prime case that's particularly fascinating. It achieved a lot of attention, a lot of media interest, and I'm quite skeptical about that. So Noreen is one. There's also Carla Barron. So Carla Barron is a Los Angeles-based psychic who, there's actual evidence of her being involved in 50, 60 plus cases. And when I say evidence, I mean testimonials from law enforcement agencies, largely within the California area and west coast of the States. But people might know her name because of she was involved in the O.J. Simpson trial.
Okay, yeah.
So not in the, her evidence wasn't put forward in the trial, but there was lots of information kind of outside of the case where she was giving information about the O.J. Simpson trial, but also the kidnapping of Elizabeth Smart, which was some years ago now, I think about 18, 19 years ago, but kidnapping of Elizabeth Smart, where she provided some highly accurate information about the kidnapping when lots of other psychics were saying that Elizabeth had died, been murdered, or been abducted and killed. She said, no, Elizabeth Smart is alive, and here are the details of where she can be found and all of that. And after the fact, she was found, and the information appeared to match. And I think it's those cases like Carla Barron, Noreen Renier, and others. There are, countless others. I find those cases fascinating. It doesn't necessarily mean that I think they are proof of psychic detection, but I think they're fascinating enough that kind of keep me engaged with the field and kind of keep me guessing about what's going on. And like I said, more recently, Madeleine McCann is an excellent case, and I think Madeleine McCann is very similar to Jack the Ripper, which is one of the first cases of psychic detection. One of the first. I mean, there's a couple of cases prior to that in France, a few hundred years before, but certainly in terms of the material we have available to us, those two cases are very similar, Jack the Ripper and Madeleine McCann, because there have been so many psychics involved in trying to solve those cases. It's never been solved.
No. And I suppose it's like a global kind of thing. I suppose, like, I don't know, would you agree, like, since the COVID thing, like, people with psychics use and trying to determine where there's a cure and all that in those few months like last year?
That's an interesting point. I didn't realize that would be the case. It wouldn't surprise me at all that was the case, but it also wouldn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me at all. I followed a few psychics who were providing predictions about what was going to be happening over the year. Would it continue? Would it not continue? Which is a yes, no, isn't it? 50-50. You're going to get it right or wrong. So I was following a lot of that, but I didn't realize there were psychics out there that were potentially involved in trying to look for a cure, which is an interesting application of their ability. It almost takes you down that Stargate CIA route, when they involved people that had a psychic ability to try and remote view and to kind of help with the military aspect. Or if psychics can help with finding a cure, then it's an application of their ability. I remain skeptical, but yeah, fascinating.
True. Well, we do a thing called the Ouija hour. We didn't put the question forward. Somebody else put it forward. Then it came up something like this was last year, and it came up summer 2021. Be all gone. But apparently, recently it said on the Ouija board there that it's going to be on and off for the next few years. As in, there's going to be.
We never heard it here first.
There we go. But as well, I suppose the cases there, as you said, is there? Have you been involved? Obviously, in criminal, you have been involved. Does it come to you often? Do people come to you?
You mean for this side of things?
Yeah,
no, not often, but enough that when I did my original training as part of my master's in investigative psychology, I got a little bit of a reputation of being, known as the spooky Mulder, like X-Files, like Fox Mulder in the X-Files. You got a reputation of being the spooky guy in the investigative psychology unit. And this was a unit in Liverpool where frequently there would be, queries and calls that would come in from police forces asking about various things. And it was more about investigative psychology. How can you assist with criminal investigations? Every now and again, and I say within the last 20 years, there have been a handful of cases, and I mean that, it's not very many. There have been queries that have come in from police forces that have a spooky element to them. And of course, when that happens, they go, who are you going to call? And it ends up on my desk. And there was one that was particularly interesting where the police I'm trying to think about how I can talk about this without giving anything away. The police had interviewed a partner in a missing person case. So if somebody went missing, they interviewed the partner who they felt was a suspect in the case. And a lot of the interview involved the suspect talking about how they had consulted psychics and what the psychics had told them. And also they started to talk about various dimensions and how that, they were getting various information themselves because they were kind of tuned into a particular dimension and kind of talking in a way that the police officers were going, we just don't get it. Can we speak to somebody who can tell us, does this stuff make sense? Is he just making this up and he's kind of using it as a smokescreen, or is it all feel genuine? And it was a lovely experience because they gave me full unedited footage of the interview, including transcripts and everything. And what I was able to tell them was, no, actually, what he's talking about in terms of the way the information is delivered from a psychic, that's genuine. But also the stuff he's talking about in dimensions, because of my expertise, I was able to say, no, actually, what he's talking about makes sense. There's a lot of people that talk about it in this way. And actually, I can tell you what books he's read.
Oh, yeah, that's the other
exactly tell you which books he's read. So for that reason, I can tell you he's not just making this up on the spur of the moment. He's basically showing a genuine interest. And it was just a lovely application of that mix between investigative psychology and parapsychology to be able to advise the police, which ultimately they were looking for. They were looking for, is he telling the truth or not? And one way of establishing that is all of this information that's coming out. Is it real? Does it make sense? And to be able to turn around and go, no, absolutely, it makes sense. Doesn't mean he was innocent, but it just meant that they could kind of remove that part of that, what he was saying, from their inquiries. So fascinating, really fascinating stuff.
Because there's a bit of something I was reading. I think it's called the Blue. Is it the Blue Psychic? Something like that. The Blue. There's a book there, but apparently it was Louise Ludwig. Blue Sense. That's the one.
Yeah, Marcello Truzzi. So it's Blue Sense by Marcello Truzzi and Arthur Lyons, which is, for anybody that's interested in psychic criminology, I would wholeheartedly recommend they get a copy of that book. Marcello Truzzi has now passed away, but he ran a centre called the Centre for Scientific Anomalies Research out in America. I think it was Michigan based, and he compiled a huge database of psychic detectives and the cases that they worked on. And as part of his research, he wrote a book with Arthur Lyons talking about psychic detection, but also talking about it in kind of a less superstar way. We talk about Carla Barron, we talk about Noreen Renier, Uri Geller, these famous psychics that get involved in cases. But he was also saying, well, there's this other aspect. The police talk about the blue sense. If they're going down an alleyway, especially American cops, they're going down an alleyway, why is there a point where they go for their gun, or unclip their gun as if ready to do, whereas in other circumstances where they go down, they might not do that. But there's something about that sense of, feeling unsafe, or there's something about to happen. And that's the phrase, the blue sense. And he was saying, well, these individuals have that, it's not a huge leap to then say, well, some people, some psychics also have as a kind of intuitive sense that can help with criminal investigations. So, yeah.
I was going to ask you was going to ask you about the police thoughts on the authorities' thoughts. There was a Louise Ludwig. She stated that was a 20 to 25% is a good psychic rate. 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5.
I'm going to be really rude now and say bollocks. Really rude, because this is why, whilst I love psychic criminology and I love chatting to psychics about their involvement in criminal investigations, to say 25% is a good rate. The issue with that is that you are assisting police in what is often a high-profile murder or missing person case. If you can tell me which one of those 4 bits of information that you're giving is the good and the accurate bit, then that's brilliant. But having spoken to psychics, they can't tell you which ones are the wrong bits. And so they're providing lots of information. The police then act on it, and it's deviating the resources, the finance, everything away from the actual investigation if they're following up on these tips, given that 1 in 4 is accurate.
That means
so it's not it's not really that helpful to talk about it in that way.
Mary says, I worked for a number of years on the coroner's court, and there were many deaths that were quite simply unexplained, and families often brought in psychics to try and help them get some answers to how their loved ones died.
Absolutely. And I think that taps into a lot of circumstances where psychics are called in on missing person cases, ongoing missing person cases, or murder cases, where the police are not obliged to take the information, but the family want to. I remain very skeptical about this sort of stuff, but Mary's absolutely right. In some circumstances, you can understand a family just wanting to know. And if there is an unequivocal death, which means they don't know the reason for it, a family will go to any means it can just to get some peace and just to go, what did happen? And there hasn't been the research done on it. There's been some related research done on hauntings and mediumship readings, but there's a part of it where you kind of go, well, in some circumstances, if it's helpful, then is it wrong? But in other circumstances, if it's perpetuating grief, if it's kind of not the truth and it's affecting somebody in a negative way, then I think it is wrong. But absolutely, I can understand why families reach out to psychics to try and get more information about the death of a loved one, or to find a missing loved one. It makes absolute sense
or to get media exposure again, just if it's a case that's gone cold for. But
absolutely.
Cathal says, hi all. Hi Cathal, how you doing, bro? And Serenity Suofar says, hi all, I'm a bit late. No worries there, you're here now. I won't charge you now.
Better late than never.
Better late than never. I'll be in contact with you soon, Serenity. Mary Kate Barry says, totally interesting. I'm sure this research is exciting and full of awesome information. # parapsychology. Definitely. You do a course, School of Parapsychology there. I put the link up during the week there, Kieran, but can you say a couple of words about that?
Yeah, so this actually came about over 10 years. At the height of Most Haunted, I was getting contacted by a lot of people saying, where can I study parapsychology? Where can I do courses on ghost hunting, that sort of thing? And I wasn't able to recommend to people where to go, to be honest. There was a course up in Edinburgh University, which is still running, which I wholeheartedly recommend. And that was about it. A lot of the stuff that was out there online was just dire. You read a book and you get a certificate, and that's it. That was a lot of the stuff. Or the information that was being provided to you on parapsychology courses was how to do a Ouija board, which is not parapsychology.
That was me.
That was you. No, so I wasn't able to recommend. So I formed the School of Parapsychology, which is an online site, effectively, where you can do online courses on parapsychology, but also my other areas of interest, things like demonology, exorcism, possession, ghost hunting, poltergeist especially. I have a particular interest in poltergeist. So there are a whole variety of courses that are available to people through that online portal. So yeah, do check it out, as well as all the stuff that I do at the university as well. So employed at Buckinghamshire New University, and I have a final year course in the 3rd year of psychology on exceptional human experiences, near-death experiences, altered states of consciousness, telepathy, precognition, hauntings, all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, absolutely.
I'm just going to reveal the results of the poll there shortly. There, just a few more shout-outs. Make says, "Hi, Kieran. Delight to see you and hear about your work." Barry there, Barry Keogh. You probably know Barry. He was there at Leprechaun Museum, I think, a good few years ago.
Yes.
Hi, Anthony. Hi, Kieran. Interesting topic. Serenity says, I love Kieran. He's amazing. What about me?
Exactly. It's all very one-sided tonight, isn't it?
I know, yeah. Norma, she's across the road from me here in County Kerry. Kicking myself here, totally forgot the time. Sorry, Kieran. No, it's fine. You're here now, there, Norma.
Absolutely.
And Mary says, Kieran, is there a paranormal experience that you quite simply cannot explain, something that completely stumped you?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, there's two things. You can rewind back to when I was talking about the green mist earlier on in the interview. That was a stumping moment. The other one, and there's a number of different ones. There's a one that we did in Ghostlands where we investigated Second World War Nazi bunker and Guernsey, one of the Channel Islands. And at the end of it, there's a point where Anna is walking down the corridor, and there's a shadow. And the best way I can describe it is there's a shadow lurking at the end of the corridor. And then as Anna approaches it, it just stays there. It doesn't move, doesn't do anything. There's nobody else in the bunker at that particular point. And as she gets closer to it, and she doesn't realize this is happening, as she gets closer to it, the shadow just kind of slowly drifts up into the ceiling, almost as though it's kind of moving away from her and hiding. It's a very odd moment, and I'd encourage people to watch it because I'd love to hear people's thoughts on what's happening. But it's one of those head-scratching moments, genuinely stumped. So yeah, thanks for that, Mary.
I was just going to reveal the results before I come to Carl's just laughing his head off, and Serenity says, "And you, Anthony, you're beautiful." Well, that's what I'm thinking you say. And Carl says, "Poor Keen, I love you too." So all the love is being thrown in. So here are the results. We asked you there, do you think psychic detectives have a role to play finding evidence in legal criminal cases in modern civilization? And here are the results. So 60% of you said, I've got the results here. I think it's 60% say, wait, I'll go to I've got a better one here. Sorry, Kieran.
It might work. Is that what it's saying?
It is a better one there. So 60% said unsure. Wow. Okay, it might work and might not work. Might work at another and not at another time. 35% yes, I agree, they are reliable, and 5% said no, I didn't agree. I don't agree. Wow. It works. So, what would you?
Well, I think the answers that people given might be slightly misleading, and they might be listening to what I'm saying and think that I would say no, but actually, in answer to that question, do you think psychic detectives have a role to play? The answer I would say is yes, which is totally against what I've been saying so far. But the reason why is because, not necessarily because it's psychic, but actually because the vast majority of cases that psychic detectives are involved in are high-profile, long-term cases. So they are murder cases or missing person cases that have gone on for 6 months or a year or longer, sometimes even cold cases. And actually, there's a benefit in some of those cases to bring in somebody that's totally external to the investigation to give a completely fresh perspective. And often give a perspective that is thinking outside the box.
True.
Because typically the sorts of conclusions that people would make who are involved in the investigation would be following a line of investigative inquiry that they would have been taught and trained at, or as detectives or police officers, there would be a particular sort of process they would follow. But actually to have somebody new, give their own perspective is very, very useful in some of those long-term cases. So yes, ultimately they do have a role to play in that respect, with the caveat that it doesn't have to be a psychic detective, of course. you know, it could be you or I. It could be anybody that just has no police training, just coming in and just going, right, I'm going to think outside the box. Have you thought about the cat did it or whatever, you know,
Yeah.
just something that takes them off on a tangent of investigation that they haven't considered. So potentially there's a role, but I think the caveat to it is what I mentioned earlier on, that because the ability is not reliable, because it's not 100% accurate 100% of the time, therefore the caveat is it genuinely helping in a criminal investigation? And my honest feeling about that is no.
And as you say, yeah, because it could be just somebody they might know actually more experienced. These psychic detectives, the most famous ones, know more of how these cases run instead of somebody that's just come across their first murder case or missing persons case.
Absolutely.
And they might know more, I suppose, the techniques that even if they are not psychic or whatever they're using, but they know how the area, demographics, the type of the person's mentality as well. So we're just going to go on to the quiz there, folks. So we have Mary and TJ there. So Mary and TJ. So you got a choice of 8 places this time there, and Kieran's got a choice as well. You got Mary, you got a choice, and TJ of the office, castle, cave, ghost ship, bedroom, fairy fort, windmill, and library. So if you can pick one of those locations, at the end of the show, we'll reveal if you're in the competition still, the Halloween mega draw. So just pick one of those locations there. Just type down the words if you're still there. Keen, which one would you go for?
Library.
Definitely library. I thought so.
Also because that's a scene right out of Ghostbusters, I think, isn't it?
Definitely there. So TJ says bedroom. So TJ's in the bedroom, and Mary's in the hairy fort. No, the fairy fort. Fairy fort. Okay, there. Okay, so the bedroom. Okay, and library for King. So I just come. Martin Crowley says hi, Kian, and all. Hi, Kian. And
hi, Martin.
Jane says hi, Anthony and Kian. Fascinating stuff. So we're just going to go on to the last subject of the night there, and it's going to be about Hampton Court Palace there.
Oh yeah.
So can you tell us there bits about the history and a bit about the palace there itself there, Kian?
Yeah, but Hampton Court Palace is a location that has a history going back to kind of the 1500s. I mean, it's an old place that has had so many different residents, but I think it's most well known for being the residence of Henry VIII, King Henry VIII. You know, there was a period in history where kind of mid 1500s where it's given to Henry VIII, and it became his residence of choice, and he did so much to it in terms of expanding it from what it was originally built as. And it's just a vast location, kind of southwest London direction near Kingston upon Thames. And you've got Thomas Wolsey, you've got Henry VIII, you've got William III, you've got a number of key individuals that are resident there, but also because of their association, you've got a number of different ghosts that haunt the location. So particularly when you think about Henry VIII and his wives, you've got a number of different hauntings associated with Hampton Court Palace, for example, to do with Catherine Howard. You know, Catherine, there's a haunted gallery in the centre of Hampton Court Palace, and so the story goes that when Catherine found out she was due to be taken to the Tower of London and beheaded, she ran down this particular gallery, and just off from the gallery was Henry VIII's private chapel area where he could sit in a private room and look over the chapel and kind of pray in isolation and not have to worry about being with everybody else. And she kind of was running to that to kind of beg for mercy, and the guards carried a kicking and screaming back along this gallery, and people report that screaming. They report her presence. They report the negative presence. They report the screaming associated with that particular corridor. Hence, it's now known as the Haunted Gallery. But it is a location for me. I have a particular love of the location, partly because I lived around that area for several years and I visited it many, many times, but also I was involved in an investigation of it back in 2000 and lived there for 2 weeks as part of the investigation, but also because it's a location where you have ghostly experiences going back hundreds of years. So very quickly into its history, you have written accounts from peoples from, say, the 1600s and even slightly earlier than that, of ghostly encounters from that point forward. And you can find other stately homes and palaces and castles around the country where you don't have that same sort of historical record. You have stories, but they're particular stories and they may not have the same sort of long history, but Hampton Court Palace has the long history in terms of haunting experiences, and that's why it's one of my top 5. It's just amazing location.
Yeah, because I know with the course there, you did a study there with Richard Wiseman, and it's
Yes.
interesting that it's interesting the study there. But as people, I don't know if you know this myself there, because you probably know, as people's perception of what's happening there, accounts of haunted activities, it changed since you were last there 20 years ago. Would you know that, or is it? I know it's probably...
Yeah, I don't know if they have changed. The only thing that, of course, we have to be more wary about is as locations such as Hampton Court Palace become more savvy and recognise the value in advertising their haunted history, that there is a fascination from tourists with haunted history, and we call it dark tourism. You mentioned about murder tourism. That comes under an umbrella hurdle, the term of dark tourism, under which there's ghost tourism, murder tourism, etc. And tourist sites, if they perpetuate and advertise that, it can help with tourists visiting. And Hampton Court Palace 20 years ago didn't necessarily advertise the haunted part in a big way. But now if you look, they have a website and they have a page specifically dedicated to the ghosts that haunt Hampton Court Palace. And so because of that, there's always a sense of, if therefore people know those experiences and know that history, they'll go into Hampton Court Palace expecting it. It's almost like the suggestion is already there. So I'd be a little bit wary about some of the experiences that people have that tie into what they see on the webpage. But what we found, and what I think is more interesting, is actually that, even when people have that prior knowledge of haunted areas, they still have experiences that aren't necessarily advertised. So there's a curator that was at Hampton Court Palace who kept all of the accounts of the haunting experiences that people had had over the centuries. And he was able to pinpoint particular areas in the palace and pinpoint kind of consistent experiences that people would have. And people still have those consistent experiences. And I don't mean people walk down the haunted gallery and they hear the screaming, or they walk down the haunted gallery and they see Catherine, or they walk in that particular area and they see Henry, for example. I don't mean that. I mean, there are particular locations where people go, something odd here, I can feel the temperature dropping. Or particular area where people don't like it, there's just a definite, they say, is a definite sense of presence. And it's bits like that that I think are more fascinating, and they consistently have not changed over the years. And I think that's the most fascinating thing about the palace.
Because it's interesting, the study you did there is like it's stuff that can be measured and monitored, like as you said there, as different. I won't mention too much because people be doing the course there, but they're putting the various rooms, putting them into sections and finding out if where they were feeling peculiar, and more or less perceiving their sixth sense more than seeing or hearing stuff there.
Yes, but also the study was
Mm.
interesting because we went into it thinking that somewhere like the Haunted Gallery would be a place that people would report more haunted experiences because it was called the Haunted Gallery, a
True, yeah.
suggestion effect. We went into it expecting that,
Mm.
but actually what we found was that there were significantly more reports of unusual experiences in areas that had a reputation for being haunted, but it wasn't affected by people's prior knowledge of that. So even when people didn't have prior knowledge, or we manipulated it in such a way and said, ignore what you know about that, but actually the haunted area is somewhere else, it didn't play a factor. People still had unusual experiences in particular locations. So
Mm.
fascinating. But also, like you said, we were able to marry those experiences with an environmental surveys looking at especially thermal imaging, so looking at temperature, but also looking at electromagnetic fields and various things, which was just, yeah, fascinating, a lovely opportunity.
I was going to go into more nitty-gritty questions there, just in a few seconds there, just about how it is today, paranormal investigating. Serenity says, residual energy, do you believe?
Oh, do I believe? You never asked a parapsychologist, do you believe? Because we'll always say it's not about belief, it's about trying to be as objective as possible. But if you say residual energy, you know, do you take on board that as another theory? Then, of course, I think the world's open to all particular theories about the paranormal. You know, it's just it's theories, isn't it? There are only theories in terms of the hauntings. The normal explanations, there's testable stuff, but when it comes to the actual hauntings themselves, there's no way you could prove residual energy or disprove it. It's going to be a theory. So, you know, it'd be arrogant of me to dismiss it, but also equally arrogant to say, yes, we can find proof of it and we can find scientific proof of it. We just can't do that. But yeah,
It's not
fascinated by it. Fascinated by it.
Yeah, so it's not like it's not a fact. We know, we don't know. We don't know, I suppose.
Yep.
But you never know in the future there. Places like Joanne says, places like Hampton Court and castles, etc., are expected to be active with spirits, but maybe it's the staff that you see and hear stuff. As normal life goes on, the spirits aren't performing monkeys.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the staff and it's the visitors. It's not the ghost hunters.
Mm.
And it's absolutely the case with any locations. You know, you'll tend to go into haunted locations because of the reputation, and sometimes it's because ghost hunters visit that location. But the original experiences will always be staff and visitors. You know, that's what will draw you to a location. So you're absolutely right, Joanne. Very good point.
And this is the question I've got to ask you now: is it hard for you to get these prestigious locations?
It's a really good question. I think in the past, it's interesting, isn't it? There's the most haunted effect, and it's a genuine term. The most haunted effect has created a scenario, a situation where locations will charge ghost hunters to come and stay the night, and that's the most haunted effect. It doesn't just mean that it appeared on Most Haunted. Any locations that have a haunted history now they'll charge, and so the negative of Most Haunted and Ghost Adventurers and Ghost Hunters, no matter what the show is that we are in a position where it's more difficult to get into locations because there's a financial aspect to it. But the positive is that we have more doors open to us, that actually more locations are open to ghost hunting. But there's also a benefit that I found as well, which is a lovely benefit. So prior to Most Haunted, I occasionally could get access to some of these locations because of the serious scientific research that was done. Now I can get access to a lot more locations because I was on Most Haunted. You know, and there's an element of people know me because of that. So I'm able to have a conversation and try and get access to locations. But not only that, some site owners can see the benefit of giving somebody like me access and kind of it can help with publicity, that sort of thing. So I'll always be grateful for the experience I had on Most Haunted that gives me some of those benefits. So yes, but saying that, you know, bigger places like Hampton Court Palace, Tower of London is another bucket list one. Some of those locations are still going to be very, very difficult to get
Mm.
access to, because they thrive on tourism, and
Mm.
they don't need ghost hunters,
Yeah,
to have that
true.
tourist income. So
I was talking to somebody actually, from Michelle. I think it was Michelle. She's still listening there. One about Dublin. One about it's actually so hard to get a location in Dublin to investigate these historical places, because they don't need people like us, because they're making enough money, and they have the need to find out if there's spirits or anything or whatever we're doing anyway there. But I suppose like London as well, it's like, it'd be so hard. Would it be so hard to investigate around there because it's tourist driven, same as Dublin?
you mean around London?
Yeah.
No,
And any
actually.
cities, yeah.
Well, any city, no, and I think it's because of the way that things have gone. Is that you will find many locations that will be open, but like I said, there are also those locations that are very tourist heavy anyway, that don't need ghost hunters to provide that extra income. So Tower of London is a prime example. It's opened once to ghost hunters in 1999 and has not been since. It doesn't need to. So you'll always get locations like that in cities where they just don't need that, but also they don't need the reputation of it being a haunted location given by ghost hunters. Tower of London has an amazing reputation anyway, without any of that. So I think that's going to be the case with a lot of cities.
I know my wife Jennifer, she was walking around the Tower of London when it was really quiet. She says, "Oh, that's spooky there." Where I suppose there was areas where they weren't allowed to go to, where I think it was the newer kind of area. I don't know, but the offices, that's what she was on about, the new offices area.
Yes.
Mary Kate Sperry says, yes, I'm sure murder and hauntings definitely draw more people to new old locations, better than normal, boring one of the mill locations. Yeah, that's true.
Absolutely.
It's true, Jenny from Emerald Isle Paranormal Research. Hi, Jenny. He says, consistent repeat research on the particular locations there. So I suppose what Jenny's saying, is on a sole location doing various studies and research into.
Yes, I think TV gives the impression that you can turn up to a location, stay there overnight, and that's it. There's no need to do anything else. Whereas what we know in reality is it's always best to try and investigate a location multiple times over a long period of time, and like Jenny's saying, they're consistently research it over a long period of time, gather the data and gather the accounts, and there's no replacement for that. I think that's kind of the best way of doing it.
And as going back to, like, say, the most haunted experience prior to most haunted locations, they didn't have any aspect of what paranormal investigating was. Only thing.
Well, I remember when I was 16, 17 years old, approaching Hellfire Caves, which a lot of people know is on the haunted map. Approaching Hellfire Caves, it was local to where I was living at the time. Approaching them, saying, "Would it be possible to investigate, to ghost hunt?" And they said to me, "How much will it cost us?"
Oh, they asked you?
They asked me, and this was before Most Haunted. Right. This is donkey's years before Most Haunted. This was way back in the day. This is, 20, 30 years ago. And yeah, they said to me, "How much will it cost us for you to do that?" Whereas now it's totally reversed. And that's what I mean. That's the Most Haunted effect. That effectively it's become a money spinner.
Mary says there is a market for haunted tourism, and big business, TV and social media have helped bring these experiences into our own living room to watch for ourselves. True.
Yeah.
True. Katie says, Kathy Houston. Hi, Kathy, light sisters. Hello, everyone. We're coming to the end of the show, nearly there. Mary says, from GhostÉire, so Ciarán, which theory would you lean to as to whether ghosts are energies of people past, quantum theory, mind convergent, parallel energies coming through like the radio or TV frequency or other? You can tell she's with art.
That's a brilliant question, Mary. And my answer to that is read my next book.
That's it. Get the
Please
next
ghosted.
book here. Jenny says from Emerald Isle Paranormal, definitely places in Dublin very hard to get.
Yeah.
So I suppose it's they've already got it. I suppose they're all owned by. We have a governing body called the OPW, Office of Public Works, and they own all these old buildings down.
Of course.
And it's very hard to get into these places.
Absolutely.
I don't know if it's like the National Trust. Siobhan Gallagher says hi. Jenny says, that's exactly what I do. I repeat locations so far, 6 to 7 years at the Millmark Museum in Drogheda. You build a rapport with the location.
That's the way to do it. Absolutely. Build that rapport with the owners, but also with the location itself.
So one of the questions I'm going to ask now, I suppose it's back to Most Haunted. I suppose one last question there. Is there any people from the Doing the Lives in the series that you would like to work with in the future?
Yeah, and never say no to any of them, to be honest. I mean, I still keep in touch with David Wells, who, I have a lot of respect for him and his perspective on mediumship and past lives. So I keep in touch with him. Leslie Smith as well, kind of curator at Tutbury Castle, but still keep in touch with her, a wonderful lady. Kath as well, occasionally keep in touch with her. And also Johnny Fury, who's one of the guest mediums on Most Haunted as well, keep in touch with her. And there's lots of people I keep in touch with. Others, they're off doing their own things, so kind of out doing their own thing. But never say never to working again. Who knows what'll happen, in terms of revisiting Most Haunted. And everybody has their big reunion show, don't they? So Friends have done it. I'm sure Most Haunted could do it at some point.
Friends. That'd be amazing. Just coming to a few more of the questions. Jane says, Lineker says, is that said on Halloween the veil between the two worlds is thinner? What are your opinions about this?
Yes, absolutely. That's a historical point to that as well. All Hallows Eve, and there's a potential pagan aspect to that. But even fast forwarding to when we started to celebrate Halloween, there's lots of people that say that there's that veil between the two worlds is thinner. As a scientist, of course, it's not my role to say that. I wouldn't say that there's any proof of that. But absolutely, there's a historical aspect, anthropological aspect to it, a cultural aspect to it. Anywhere that celebrates Halloween, that's exactly the point. It's not about dressing up and looking like Freddy from Nightmare on Elm Street or whatever it is. It's about that veil between the two worlds. So the same way that I think more so when you have the Day of the Dead, the celebration in Mexico that happens. I think that is so much more about that veil between the two worlds being thinner. I think it's a lot more about that.
Is that November the 1st, or I think was that?
Yes, I think it's sometime in November. I don't know the exact date, and I don't know enough about it. But all I know is that there's a definite association with that in that particular festival.
Just come to a few more last questions before we head off, and we're just going to go ask you there, Kieran, what you've got planned and coming up as well. Joanne Green says, if you ever have a historic area, if you ever holiday in a historic area, do you switch off the skeptic paranormal brain?
No, never do. No, never do. Always working.
I see you are. Martin Crowley says, go to George Jarvis School. I love the location in Staunton on Wee.
Yeah, I've been to George Jarvis School with Spectacular. As Martin does stuff with Spectacular. Fantastic location. Fantastic events company too, but fantastic location. One of those locations, one of your guests said earlier on, do they feel as though, with more tourists visiting a place, does it take away the energies? George Jarvis School is lovely because people just haven't investigated it yet. It's only really been open to investigators for a very short period of time. So brilliant location.
Are you there on the 16th? Is that right?
16th, although we're holding off. We maybe not be going for the 16th. We're just debating whether or not we hold off to November for that, because I know Halloween's a very busy period for people. So watch this space, but look out for that. That'll be an investigating poltergeist workshop together with a ghost night.
Okay. So it'd be a noisy affair.
Noisy affair, yes. Mischievous objects moving.
Where's my cup of tea? God, I don't know. I only bought it 2 seconds ago.
Like
Oh,
this.
there you
Ooh. There it goes. Look at that. In fact, I love
At
some of
least
that.
it's not self-raising flour.
Exactly.
That's a different story. Michelle says, we stayed at Castle Leslie the day after Most Haunted were there. We stayed in Norman's room, the room with the levitating bed, lots of pings on the bed pans during the night. We had just started out as a paranormal investigators, and we were super excited that a big show had kicked off our experience at the time.
Brilliant. Castle Leslie has a particular fondness for me. It was one of the first ever locations I did with Most Haunted. I think it was the third location, second or third location I did with them. So amazing place, amazing.
Yeah, it's actually Fermanagh, I think it is Fermanagh. Yeah.
Yes, but close to the border.
Mary Kate says, "Oh, I would love to see a reunion of Most Haunted crew."
That would be interesting.
So we've just gone on to the quiz there. So, well, the competition, it's not a quiz there. So this is TJ, you said the bedroom. Mary, you said the fairy fort, not the hairy fort. And Kean, it's near the end of the night there. And Kean says the library there. So let's see how you get on. Are you in the Halloween mega draw? So there's a choice between the office, castle, cave, ghost ship, bedroom, fairy fort, windmill, and no luck with the cave or the library. Oh, unlucky there. Or the castle, which would mean it's all good news for you, Mary, from Back in Time, and TJ. Mega draw, where you can win some YouTube software to get your videos downloaded and up to the next 24 hours. For your public ghost hunts or whatever. So, anyway, that's the statement. So, Kieran, there. So you have the book Ghosted coming out, and also you've got a tour as well that's coming up. Is that true?
Yeah. So, Battersea Poltergeist is a podcast that I did with Danny Robbins that was on BBC Sound or BBC Radio 4 earlier this year. Amazing case from 1956. And turning that podcast into a theatre show, which starts on the 25th of October and runs to the 7th of November. Locations around England, so includes Manchester, Ipswich, York, London, Poole, Cheltenham, Basingstoke, various places. And people can find out more by clicking on batterseapoltergeistlive.com.
Yeah, we've got some of the dates there. Wednesday the 27th. So if you're in England or going over to England there, it's Guildford. 27th of October, 30th is Basingstoke. 31st is London. November 1st is Ipswich. 2nd of November is York. 3rd of November is Poole. I think that's there's one in Cheltenham anyway, and the 7th of November is Brighton. Sorry, my eyes, that's very small, so you might be able to see it better at home. But that's the Battersea Poltergeist live. With Kieran. Is there anything else you've got planned coming up then as well, Kieran?
Apart from Ghosted, well, yes, I'm doing a para-ethics book. So there'll be a para-ethics book coming out at some point in the spring about the ethics of haunting investigations and kind of providing guidance on that. I'm also doing an interviewing manual as well for people that do private cases. So kind of taking some of the work that I've done in forensic psychology and doing that. There'll be a couple of articles coming out as well, kind of research articles that I've written. So they'll be on my social media pages announcing about that. But October is always the busiest month of the year for me for quite obvious reasons. And now with this theatre show, it just means it's going to be incredibly busy. So yeah, look out for all announcements about stuff that's happening. And yeah, I was going to say I'll probably be sleeping November, December after everything that's going to be happening. But yeah, exciting times.
And the School of Psychology, I've just been doing it with their Kieran, and I recommend it to anyone there. Really, it's amazing. And thank you, King, because I'm going to say personally myself, it takes a lot of hard work to do all the slides and to communicate with people, different people, and also as well to give your expertise. People would say, "Oh, these online courses, blah, 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 blah," but to give your expertise and give your view. When I first did it, there was like, "Well, I thought I knew bits of stuff, but even blew my mind even more." So appreciate that. So I recommend it, people. There's the School of Parapsychology. If you could check that out as well.
Brilliant.
It's also on the Facebook page. I put a link to it there earlier during the week. Mary says, "Brilliant, thanks guys, great show, and best of luck here with the new book and all your spooky adventures."
Thank you, Mary.
And Irene from California says, "Great show and great info. Thank you, Anton and Dr. O'Keeffe."
Thank you, Irene.
It'd be great to see you over here again, Kieran. There,
yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
definitely.
Norma says, "Thanks, a great show tonight, Anthony and Kieran." TJ Mills says, "Brilliant, thanks a million, Kieran and Anthony. Brilliant show, really interesting and enjoyable. We'll definitely order the book."
Lovely. Brilliant. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Norma, TJ, Joanne. It's lovely. Lovely comments.
Joanne
lovely
says,
questions.
"Thank you, Kieran." And Mary says, "I could listen to you all night."
Fab.
I don't know, that's towards me. I don't know.
I don't know who that's directed at, but
I don't know.
At some point we've got to go to sleep, so
yeah.
and all night.
I know. And Jenny says, "Get well." I don't know. That's towards me. I don't know.
No, I think that's me and my sniffling.
Sniffling. It's the tree behind. Oh, one last question. I know there's Right Said Fred. There's John Travolta. I could ask you there. Bear from Celebrity Ghost. What was he like?
I'm a celebrity. Get me out of here. Yes.
Celebrity Ghost. Yeah, I'll ask you that for another day, John Travolta. So folks, on the next show we have John Fraser from SPR, Society of Psychical Research. You know them, obviously, they're key.
Yep.
So John's going to be talking about poltergeist, obviously, subject there, the Cage Witches Prison, and St. Osyth, I think it is, and the state of UK paranormal research. So that's next weekend. Joanne says we could listen. Yeah, I already put that down. So thank you, folks. Thank you for the comments there. Thank you, Kieran and Anne and everyone else that's been around there. I won't see you next time. I'll see you in the nearest distance. Goodbye for now, folks. Bye, 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 bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Anthony. Bye, bye.
Bye, bye, bye.